It's 210 square meters. Okay. 102. 1 square is 2, ça fait 2 mètres carrés. Et on
Don't worry, I've got it from you.
No, it's for me. I want to know 1, 2, 3, 4.
My name is Karabo. I am an illustrator, a graphic designer, and a street artist based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I'm inspired by the everyday African aesthetic, and that really came from growing up in a town called Vereniging. I grew up very Sotho and very traditional, and our family and culture believes in honoring, and a way that a child honors their parents, or one way that a child can honor their parents, is going into a career that's seen as respectable. So the whole idea for me was to become Dr. Moletsane. So I went through primary school thinking that, but there was always a lingering desire for creativity and for art, but it was never put as my focus. The highest in the middle. Okay. As I reached 18, and that's my last year of high school, we had a substitute art teacher come into our school. She took a look at my art, told me like she really enjoys the art that I create, and asked me what I want to become one day, thinking that I would answer a fine artist or anything in the creative industry. And I told her that I wanted to become a doctor, and specifically a reconstructive surgeon. And I always think back to her face of just shock. And she asked me why, and my reason was pretty simple. I didn't want to disappoint my parents, and I didn't have the image of living at home for the rest of my life.
She wants to enjoy.
Whenever I'd been exposed to artists, it was never something that was positive. And specifically looking at artists that came from my background, very small town. I had never really even lived in the city, so not much exposure to anything creative. And the mindset that I grew up in was that a creative industry not only will bring dishonor to your family, it will bring instability to your life. So she told me that she understands my perspective and understands my reasoning as well, but I should maybe consider the world of visual communication. So taking fine art, but making it more practical in the everyday world. I grew up in the world of TV, video games, series, movies, so it was very much a media-driven time. I would watch The Simpsons and Disney over and over, and I remember thinking that studying visual communication is actually putting those two passions of mine together. But whenever I looked at the media that I consumed, I never really saw representation. I didn't see people that looked like me within the media that I loved so much and consumed so much of. I would never even see people that I would see every day within that media. And I kept on having this desire to see people that look like me or my family or my neighbors put on this media and like celebrated in the same way that I'm seeing my counterparts being celebrated. So I decided I would use my university degree to be able to change this narrative and finally give the representation that's correct and authentic, and I think that was overdue. Whenever I'd be in the city centers taking photos of either people, what they were wearing, or street art or markets, people would always say to me, "Kopa unke snepe," which is Sotho for, "Can you take a photo of me?" And this was a phrase that I would hear every single time that I went, and people associate, obviously, cameras with that footage going to media. And that gave me the idea that I wasn't the only one that had the desire to see proper representation of everyday people, but this was like a collective desire within people in Pretoria and Johannesburg. And then I realized in South Africa that something needs to change. The representation of Black people, Black culture and identity, and specifically a contemporary one, needs to be something that's represented by also a Black person and someone a part of that community. I am driven to preserving our aesthetic, celebrating it, and presenting it in a way that the world hasn't seen before, so that it can be a correct representation of what's happening on the country and also inspire more people to do it. So this began a very nerve-wracking journey, as I didn't really see anyone that looked like me or came from my background even doing this. In university, we learned about incredible South African artists, and I always dreamed of seeing one that maybe came from a small town, happened to be Black and female, not working in an agency. It was a very specific image I had, but I wanted to have that image because that was one that was mine. And it was a real tough time finding, I think, not because there weren't any Black women doing incredible things, but I think it's because they weren't celebrated and elevated as much as counterparts. So it became really difficult to find. So I decided that I want to be the representation that I wished I saw when I was studying and growing up. And I realized I can't really do that if I work for an agency. So at the tender age of 23, I decided to freelance and start my own company. And everything that I did would be dedicated to preserving the African aesthetic. I realized that this isn't a desire just for my country, but this is a desire for my continent as well. And as that grew, I realized that this was a desire for the African diaspora too. I wanted to make my work as accessible as possible. I would only create things digitally, and I felt as though I'm not really getting my message out if everything of mine only lives in a place where you would need internet to access it. And internet in South Africa is incredibly expensive and not accessible to the whole country. So I decided that I would make my message easier for people to access, and that's where street art started. That's when I started creating murals, because I get to speak a message and an idea in a whole other way where people would experience it just from being able to see it or just driving past it. And it already creates curiosity, first of all, for the scale in which murals live in, but also because of how different the style that I was creating was in. My friend, you can go up, please. Within South Africa, I think at the time we had seen more graffiti, more traditional graffiti. But I wanted to see what our street art would look like if it was solely a South African voice speaking towards this art that people would be experiencing in their everyday commute to work, for example. As a kid, the first place I really saw people that looked like me represented in art was on the walls of barbershops and salons that I visited with my family to get our hair done. The beautifully stylized side profile faces of familiar people left such a strong impression on me that I reference it to this day in my work. So my style had always been inspired by where I first saw representation, and that was going to go get my hair done with my family every 2 weeks. So we would go to barbershops, my mom and I would go to the hair salon, and I just remember always being taken aback by the beautiful hand-painted signage on the outside, the different portraits of like side profile faces, of the different hairstyles that you can get inside the barbershop or the hair salon. And I always remembered thinking, I recognize those people. This feels like home. This is something that's very iconic to where I grew up, where I currently live, and I keep on seeing examples of it throughout Africa. I dug deeper into celebrating and representing that style of art and communication and using that within my work as well. And each time I create work, I make sure that I'm honoring the past, where my inspiration came from, the present, where I feel there's been this change in how South Africans, specifically Black Africans, are being represented, and the future potential in which our aesthetic is going. For me to be able to be in this vessel and the skin and doing what I'm doing is really something that's pretty unheard of from where I come from. When you look at the 3 spheres in which my creativity operates, it's pretty male dominated when it comes to working in South Africa. So many times I've been not only the only Black person, but often the only woman, and then being a Black woman, it's something that we really don't see. For me to be able to be taken as seriously as my counterparts, I need to do almost 10 times the amount of work to be able to be seen as almost an equal.
I say when I'm shooting, so I'm ready. So don't blink. Ready, 3, 2, 1. Perfect. Just another one.
A different pose.
Yeah, you can. Yes, perfect.
Being an artist creating giant works of art with a message, the message isn't just carried by the art that's created, it's also carried by the artists themselves. I think being a Black woman, a queer Black woman from South Africa, and creating the art that I'm doing, that way of living and that way of creating is a form of activism as well. It's going into those spaces that formerly weren't reserved for us. We weren't invited into those spaces, but putting myself there and bringing others into those spaces with me, and us like linking together and doing that is a form of our activism, just doing it within our skin and identifying the way that we're identifying. And I think that's so powerful because people are getting two messages in one. They're getting the message from the artwork, but the fact that an artist that identifies in this way is creating the art, I think is the kind of energy change, the kind of mindset change that needs to happen. I often think back and have this picture in my head of people saying, like, if we're looking for an incredible artist that ticks all the boxes when it comes to critical thinking, technique, originality, innovation, they immediately think of a Black woman. So I can't wait for that to be just the norm. And yeah, I'm excited to be one of the people that get to play a part in that, even in just a small way. But I think one of the beautiful things about being an artist and being able to create street art and illustration and any kind of visual communication is that we have a responsibility to speak towards socio-political matters in a way that is different to anything else that people will experience. I think when people are able to see art, there's a different reaction than reading information. I think artists have a unique way of communicating, and I think that's our responsibility, to communicate messages that work to start the right conversations, start to repair, and actually show people the possibility of what's to come. So why I wanted to come to Junction to answer your question is I'm from a very similar place in South Africa.
Elle vient d'une place similaire dans le sud.
Que c'était jonction chez elle dans sa ville en fait.
Okay.
Yeah, and it possibly is even worse. It's not very popular. People didn't really like the place that I'm from, and no one really thought I would get anywhere or ever leave that place.
Les gens ils aiment pas vraiment habiter où ils sont et ça ressemble un peu à ici et tout le monde veut partir.
Et que tu penses,
Ça va,
que
tu
si
peux,
t'as pas-
mais
c'est
tire un peu
question
comme
de-
T'as qu'à comprendre.
T'as peu de choses de sortir de l'endroit où t'es et peu de choses de faire des trucs après en fait.
So I always think back to if I can do it, coming from a place like that, if I can work with Nike, if LeBron James can wear my sneakers, then I don't think it's tough for anyone of you to be able to do even better.
Si elle peut faire, tout le monde peut faire ça. Bah oui, c'est vrai.
Yeah, there it is. So then today I wanted us to get our hands dirty with doing some customizing of t-shirts.
Aujourd'hui, on va faire des t-shirts.
My friend, I could have done that.
He goes straight to the point.
Yeah, I could have done that. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to tape your shirt either in half this way or down the middle. But what we're going to do is you're going to take the fabric pins and then draw only on one side. Okay.
Non, oui, elle a dit
En gros, tu
on doit
dessines.
prendre, on prend un de notre couleur préférée, celle qu'on veut, et on peut colorier que d'un côté.
Then when you're done,
Mais colorier what?
whatever you would
Ce
like.
qui t'inspire l'art, t'as capté? Exprime-toi avec le dessin.
And then the other
T'as regardé ou
side
pas?
Mais
is going
si
to
on
be
rate.
what we dip.
Tu rates, c'est de l'art, frérot, tu rates jamais de l'art, mec.
I really do think mentoring is really important because when I look back to when I was young and trying to see what I want to study, and even while studying which direction I want to go, I was very set on taking a different route. The main route was find an agency, work your way up from junior designer, senior designer, creative director, then from there kind of stay in the agency until pretty much you win enough awards to be able to stay at home. And I didn't really see how that is helping my vision to like preserve the African aesthetic, to inspire more artists to go into like the creative industry. So that's where mentoring comes in.
Ah ouais.
The circle. Oh, that's cool.
Yes,
turned out
but
deep.
it is the mic.
Ah, you see now, my friend, we put it too deep.
Mais c'est pas grave, en vrai, ça va rajouter un style, mon gars.
Bah oui, c'est pas grave. Parce que t'as les... Après...
Taking young artists and giving them as much information that I have, that I've learned throughout the years, in the hopes that they make fewer mistakes and then that propels them even further. It also gives them a head start, I think. I could help them within finding their style. Even needs making me move.
Mais non, mais c'est...
But thank you for bringing me.
No problem.
You don't understand. I never thought I'd leave vereniging ever. I thought Johannesburg was going to be the furthest I go. So it's much.
I'm Mélanie Routier. I'm the founder of Shap Shap, and this is Karabo Poppy Moletsane, the amazing, great, and I call her a genius. Now, just before we speak about the project, and Karabo also will be speaking to you, I just wanted... Je sais pas pourquoi je parle en anglais. Pardon. Je vous ai dit qu'on était un peu émus. Quand j'ai vu son travail, je me disais, mais, enfin, dans ma tête, je me suis dit, c'est mortel. Il faut absolument qu'elle vienne à Genève, il faut absolument qu'elle fasse une fresque ici. Je vais lui donner la parole, qu'elle vous parle d'elle et de son travail. Merci beaucoup, en tout cas.
So with that, I brought a message from home, and we've titled this mural Proud Mary. And I think something that's really strong about like African ideologies is to still be proud in your identity and heritage, even when people are telling you to not be proud of it. Yeah, so thank you for collaborating with me on this wall. This was really a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so thank you.
Merci beaucoup de m'avoir laissé peindre sur ce lieu. C'était une occasion, une opportunité unique pour moi.
It's great to see intergenerationally people are responding to my work. whether it be on sneakers, on walls, experiencing it as one prints. It's been an interesting journey. And each time I have to pinch myself awake to realize that this is actually happening to me. But it makes me excited to see what's going to be happening to the next generation of Black women that are going to be creating, that are coming from small places, who previously our voices weren't paid attention to or elevated. All of that is changing, and I'm excited to see what's going to be the product of that. Yeah.